much. Hope this works. There we go. Okay, yeah, so thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I'm really excited to do this. This is my first time doing a webinar as part of the SIG, so I know I've got a lot to live up to. I know that Laura from Sunderland and Dave from Bristol have done some excellent sessions. So hope this is as interesting for you as they were. So yeah, today, as Catherine said, I'm going to talk to you about the activities that we've been doing in Durham to support students to have immersive experiences that really enhance the learning that they're having here at Durham. So what I'm going to do is set the context for you, so talk a bit about what happens in the curriculum and how we work outside the curriculum to support all of that and help students take action. I'll talk to you about the case study of our Summer Innovation Fellowship as our big sort of flagship program that's enabling us to do this, what we think made it work in its first year. I'll also talk about some of the changes that we're making for the second run of it this year. But I also wanted this to be a really practical session for you as well. So I've got a framework that we've used to set this all up that hopefully you can take away and think about how you might make this happen as well at your own institution. But first of all, I know some of you in the room do know who I am, but for those who don't, I'm the Senior Innovation Manager working within the Venture Lab at Durham. I am the lead for the new Hunt Raymond Innovation Programme, which I'll talk to you a bit about today. But essentially, I'm a design thinking specialist. I've got about 6 or 7 years of developing and designing programmes using design thinking methods to really encourage students to engage specifically with the SDGs. All of my work is rooted in the SDG framework as well, because I'm really passionate about it. I think students have the potential to make really big change. We've seen it happen. And that's my passion project at Durham. And I support students to develop really innovative solutions to real world problems, and designed a program called Game Changer. We've been running that for a long time now. It's an innovation sprint that was recognized a few years ago by the UN as SDG good practice for engaging students with the SDGs and actually taking action on them as well. So that's me in a nutshell for those who I haven't met before. But today I'm going to talk to you about our Summer Innovation Fellowship and creating these immersive experiences and why we've chosen to do it this way. So as I'm sure is the case at every university, there's a lot of taught programs in our curriculum that do offer students the chance to explore and conduct this research into SDGs. So a few examples on the screen there. But a few years ago, Durham did a whole review of their curriculum and mapped the entirety of it to the SDGs to see where there might be gaps. So there's a lot more going on now with this whole curriculum review than there ever has been before. And that's really exciting for me because that's always where I start. I start with what the students know, where they are, what they're interested in, and then build from there. So I do my very best to really tap into what's going on in the academic world at Durham to make sure that I'm, doing things that students will know about from their studies. But really, my interest is taking it beyond what they're taught in the classroom. And that's where my passion lies, and really moving them into this action space, because obviously they're building this real awareness and understanding of the SDGs through their teaching, through the debates they have, and they're developing real deep understanding of it. But a lot of them are still struggling to see how they can personally contribute beyond that classroom environment. And that's where the Venture Lab activity that I run comes in. So this is the Venture Lab strategy. We reviewed this a few years ago to give the team a real focus on the areas of work that we are all specialists in. So I sit at the top of this inverted pyramid, and the sustainable innovation space is where all of my activity happens. So I work in the really, really early stages with students, thinking about what they care about, what they'd like to do, and the skills and mindsets that they have to develop in order to make those things happen. So really the idea creation space is where I'm working. And that ties into a lot of other strategies across the whole institution, including academic work, so what they're having to teach, how they are including value creation and idea development within the curriculum, I can go in and support them do that in this area. It ties into our global strategy as well. So we have a strategy where the Vice-Chancellor wants every student to have a global experience while they're here at Durham, and that takes many different forms. But this work that I do really ties into that global experience as well, so that they are global citizens and they're aware of what's going on in the world. And then there's the skills and mindsets development side of things. So helping them to think really differently is where I'm sort of comfortable with teaching. And then this moves them through a pipeline of what do they do with that knowledge. And that can sometimes mean starting a business. It can sometimes mean going into a different organization to make change there as well. And we have this offer of support that moves them through this funnel. But I sit right there at the top, and that's where everything I'm going to talk about today sits as well. So I wanted to talk about the Summer Innovation Fellowship because it's a good example of how we're moving students from what they're taught and what they know into actually taking some action. It's really exciting that we've been able to run this program because it's an idea I've been sitting on for a long time, especially with the success of Game Changer at Durham, and seeing how that has engaged students with sustainable development goals and making things happen there. I wanted to do more with it, and the Summer Innovation Fellowship had allowed me to do that. So it's been really exciting to see that all come to life after sitting on this idea for so long. But what is it? So it's an 8-week program. It gives students time really to immerse themselves in developing skills, in having a deeper understanding of what they're passionate about and who they are, and developing mindsets and tools to become future-ready innovators, as we call them. And it gives them that space to get to know people that they wouldn't ordinarily work with. It's very interdisciplinary. We recruit from right across the university for this program. And it gives them that time that they wouldn't have otherwise to really explore what they care about and what kind of impact they might want to have. It offers the students a £2,000 stipend, which contributes to their living costs over summer because we ask them to stay in Durham. It's an in-person programme, and we want to take away any barriers to access that might cause for some students. So I'll talk about how it's funded in a moment, but we give them this stipend to cover their costs over the summer. And within the programme as well is a funded trip to India. And we put that in there so that they can really gain real world knowledge of applied innovation in some challenging environments, some really exciting environments as well. And I'll talk more about why we chose India in a little bit. Now, it's not branded as a startup program at all because we didn't want to put people who don't want to start a business off applying. We wanted to make this a really accessible experience for students. But we do frame the activity so that they end the program with an idea that could have that potential. But even if it doesn't, they've then got a whole new set of skills and mindsets that they can take into whatever they decide to do because they're really useful, as we all know as enterprise educators, how useful these tools and mindsets are. But we did want to drive them and give them that North Star of you could have a startup idea at least by the end of this program. But we work with them around developing a roadmap for action. So the idea, as I said, it was inspired by Game Changer. Game Changer, as it stands now, is a 2-day innovation sprint, but it started life as a 6-week program. So for me as a design thinking specialist, Game Changer doesn't quite give the students an experience of doing a full design thinking project. It's a snippet of it. It's a very fast-paced, accelerated experience. But the original Game Changer was that fuller piece. And I've always wanted to do something more with that. And that's where the summer program idea came from, is giving the students time to really research a problem and come up with solutions at the end of that. So there was also demand from students. Game Changer has never lost popularity over the years that we've been running it. It regularly attracts over 100 students every time we do it. And from the increase in students using the Venture Lab in terms of starting a business, we knew there was demand from the student body to do more activity where they could explore what they were interested in and passionate about, and then have that space and time to think about how they can add value. Now, this program is alumni funded, thanks to Neil Hunt, who at Durham is affectionately known as the Netflix guy, because he was one of the 6 founding members of Netflix. And his partner, Julie Raymond, gave us a donation a couple of years ago to develop this suite of innovation activity. So the Summer Innovation Program is part of a much larger program that I'm leading on, which includes a lot of workshops. We have some PhD scholarships in there, buying out their time to work on SDG innovation projects. We have a new innovation prize, which ran for the first time last week, and the results from that will be announced soon. And then we have activities that are specifically focused on the STEM activity that happens here at Durham as well. Again, it's focused on creating a pipeline of high potential startups, but it really starts with all those skills and mindsets. So the startups might not happen straight away, but we're giving these students these skills and attributes to go away with and have the ability to do that if it's something they want to do. So we are very lucky to have that funding to make this happen. However, at the end, I'm going to caveat this with saying I am going to give you some examples of things we do with no budget, which also allows students to have these immersive experiences, but just on a different scale. So I'm going to talk about that as well at the end. But the 8 weeks in a nutshell, starts with a boot camp. We really enjoy doing these boot camps for students as a chance for them to get to know each other, to get to know the team, but really, more than anything, to understand themselves. As I said earlier, we like to start with where they are, what they currently know, where they'd like to be, what kind of big ideas they have for their own future, but also where their values lie, and where that's connected to the SDGs and helping them understand how that actually connects in. So we start with that boot camp. We don't really do a huge amount of work in terms of introducing our methodology, using design thinking and effectuation and lean innovation. We don't do any of that until much later in the program. This is purely about them at the start, and helping them find who they might want to work with over the 8 weeks. Then throughout it, we did move into that deeper dive into how what they're interested in links to the SDGs, how the SDGs are all connected together, what kind of systems are at play that might be causing challenges, in different areas of the world. Really letting them have the time to do some deeper research. And then from that, going into the problem framing and opportunity spotting activities, and some ideation as well. Now, as well as the trip to India, which I will talk about in more detail, where we met all kinds of grassroots organisations, NGOs, academic institutes, and some startups as well. We did pepper in immersive experiences. The whole thing is an immersive experience, but we wanted to add in other little elements of it to help them think really differently. So we peppered that in throughout the whole 8 weeks. And the 8 weeks ended with a big showcase, which wasn't in the shape of a traditional pitch, although it had elements of that. It was more of them telling the story of what they'd learned about themselves and about new things over the 8 weeks. So we did a big showcase event, and then we worked with them to roadmap what their future might look like, at least for the next 6 months, and what kind of other activity they could get involved in with Venture Lab to bring ideas to life if that's the route they wanted to take. So that's it in a nutshell there. That's what the 8 weeks covered, all of that activity. But from the get-go, at day 1, we embedded the SDGs. It was really important for us to let them know that that was going to be our focus. And it was their focus as well. They were super keen for that. They knew that from applying for the program that was what it was all about, was how they can make an impact on SDGs. So we embedded that from day 1 at the boot camp. You can see them all there. We had 20 students on the cohort in total. So then what we did was we talked about their personal values, and linking that into the SDGs. So we did Ikigai exercises with them. Paul, my colleague, did some really fun networking bingo with them where they had to find people with similar interests and things like that. And we just had a good time getting them to think about who they are and what they wanted to do and what they want to achieve as part of the program as well. So we then also had some, oh, sorry, that shouldn't have sound on it. Fly. Yeah, so that was a paper airplane race that they had, which might not seem very innovative, but the origami workshop was a really interesting one because it allowed them to think really differently compared to how they've been thinking before. Because I learned a lot as well. Origami is actually used in a lot of different areas that are really, really innovative. So we had Murto, who is a PhD student, come in to do this session with the students called Unfolding Possibilities, and it was getting them to think outside the box, quite literally. But she gave examples of how origami is used in architecture, and the coolest example was in space flight. So the James Webb Telescope, apparently the design team had an origami specialist in there thinking about how the spacecraft would fold up and unfold so that it could, propel through space. So that was really cool. And I think it really surprised the students because they weren't expecting that kind of thing to be linked to something that was just a sheet of paper. So trying to give them experiences of different ways of thinking was a real key thing for us. And then we had the immersive global experience and took them to India for 2 weeks. So why India? Well, we had existing connections there already. The university has a lot of MOUs with various different academic institutions in India. We also had connections there through some of our startups that we've worked with. We so we knew a lot about the landscape that we were going into. So we knew that there was a lot of challenges in India, but also a lot of incredible innovation. It's a real hub of technical innovation happening out there as well, but specifically focused on climate action and kind of sustainable development as well. But also, I think a lot of students are kind of drawn to reading about sort of different challenges that are out there in the world that are in places that are different to what they already know. But it's one thing reading about it, and it's a completely different thing going there and experiencing that for yourself. So we wanted to do that to create that real deep human connection and increase that collaborative element of the program as well. And to enable them to build a global understanding and think bigger, beyond what their current sort of limitations were. And again, linking back to that global strategy that the university has, it did offer the opportunity for students who otherwise wouldn't be able to travel to actually do that as part of their university experience. So that was a key driver for us in choosing India as the place to go for this destination. But throughout, we didn't want to just take them there and let them meet a whole different range of people and not do anything with that. We gave them this journal to take with them so that they could really be intentional with the kind of observations they were making while they were there. So we asked them every day to fill in this journal, thinking about what they'd seen, how it connected into different global challenges, what kind of innovation they might have witnessed in the spaces we'd been in that day, any further questions they might have, things they want to explore beyond what they'd learned that day as well. And then we had these real focused reflections, so giving them that time and space to think about what they'd learned. So what are they noticing in terms of patterns or, what kind of things are they wanting to explore further? How are local insights challenging their existing knowledge or enriching that as well? And then what opportunities for innovation might exist, just to get them thinking so that when they got back to the UK, they could really remember what they'd learned. So the SDGs were embedded throughout the trip through the people that we met. This was really serendipitous. We went on a street art tour in Delhi, and there was a whole mural dedicated to the Sustainable Development Goals that we just walked past. We couldn't quite believe it was there. So it just felt like really, really great to see that. But the kinds of organizations that we took the students to see, again, had the SDGs at the heart of them. So we went to a place called Atlas Skill Tech University, which is a very entrepreneurial university. And again, it used all the design thinking methods that we were teaching our students, again, linking to the SDGs and getting their students to come up with real solutions. We went to Pearl Academy, which was addressing sustainable fashion. Lots of interesting activities, very community focused activities happening in that place. That was really cool to go there. We went to the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Again, really eye-opening as to how construction takes place, especially in the mega cities like Mumbai and Delhi that we were in. It was really interesting to hear, the kind of considerations that have to go into that side of things with the construction and making things really resilient to natural disasters that happen there. We also went to the LGBTQIA plus Centre in Delhi to understand how attitudes are changing, how they're advocating for people there as well, which was really cool to see. So we peppered in, different SDGs and different interests that we'd learned from the students all the way throughout the trip. I would say the sequin trip, the Centre for Equity Inclusion, was definitely the highlight. I think it was the most transformative session that we went to. The students got to meet a group of girls who took part in their activity, which was all about upskilling girls, young girls and women, and introducing them to sports as well, in particular football. Our students got to play a game of football with them. They got to hear their stories. They got to understand really the kind of environments they were living in, and the kind of limitations that were there as well, and how they were trying to overcome that through the work they were doing with Sequin. Sequin really were trying to push in the fact that they worked with the men in the communities as well, to make them male allies for the women, so they could really see what women could achieve when given the opportunities. So yeah, that's the students playing football with the students there. It was a great day. I think really probably the most transformative day. We all felt a little bit changed after that experience, which was exactly what we wanted, really, from that trip. So then, of course, when we got back to England, we, did a lot of time with the students thinking about how what they had learned had changed their perspective, what kind of ideas they might want to come up with now in relation to the problems they were exploring before they went. Had that changed, or had the experience enriched that? And really trying to get them to come up with ideas that could be tangible solutions to problems that they were wanting to solve. So you can see in the photographs here where some of the students are prototyping some ideas that they had come up with. This one here in particular is linked to an air brick that they had seen in a slum that we visited in Mumbai. And again, it linked to the disaster resilient infrastructure talk that we'd had. When they were talking to members of the community on that visit, they learned that the lower ground level of the slum houses have these air bricks in them, and when there's a flood, that obviously the entire house floods, and there's no current solution. So the students talked to them, and then they also talked to a workshop in the slum area that was recycling plastic, and thought, well, why can't we use this plastic and form it into a plug for the air brick? And that was the idea they came up with. And then they've been talking to the NGO that works in that community to think about how they can make that happen, and if that is a tangible solution to that problem. So it really was focused on using the experiences they'd had, and not just filling in the journal and putting it on a shelf. It was really using it to turn that into something they could practically do. So why did it work? Well, we really wanted to measure it properly, to make sure that the aims and outcomes we'd set, which are on the screen there at the start of it, we knew what we wanted to achieve. We wanted to make sure that we had achieved that with the students, and we learned a lot in that first go round from the students in terms of what they wanted it to be as well. But certainly, I think the majority of the students did say that they developed these skills, innovation skills, entrepreneurial mindsets, building up that collaborative teamwork, awareness of sustainability, on a much deeper level than perhaps it had before. That global perspective, certainly, I think it developed. I'll let them speak for themselves in a second, but I think taking them out of that comfort zone and experiencing new things was really, really important and vital. And certainly, I think that entrepreneurial intent, so wanting to do something, really do something after the program was definitely there. In the majority of the students that we heard from after the program. 80% of them reported that they had increased confidence in applying what we taught them, and they could really see the value in, driving forward some of their own ideas. Three of them are actively pursuing startups now as well, all rooted in the SDGs. So Alice, who you'll hear from in a second, is working on a music education project. Andrew has Just Include, which is all about including disability advocacy in governmental white papers. Rory is connecting students to startups for work experience. And then two of the other cohort are leading Enactus projects, which are social enterprise projects, again, rooted in the SDGs. I'll talk a bit more about Enactus as well in a minute. But I just wanted so that you didn't have to listen to me for so long, I wanted to ask Rory and Alice as well to tell me how they felt about the project. So this is Rory's testimonial. And then this is Alice. So Alice is actually now actively working on the idea that she came up with in the program last year. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, really, for the summer innovation program. I think we're learning a lot from the students. We're still in touch with the cohort from last year. They gave us a lot of really good feedback on how we could improve it for this year, and we're about to launch it again. We've just recruited the next cohort, and I think for me, the big learning was giving the students a real focus on where they should be by the end of the program. Because as I said at the start, it isn't a startup program. We're not expecting them to come out of this with a startup ready to go. But I think if they can have that as their North Star, as Rory calls it, so that they have that focus all the way through. They know that then they're coming out with an action to take forward. So that's a key thing that we're underpinning a lot of the activity with this year as well. And the trip to India last year, we met a huge amount of organizations. It was almost overwhelming, the amount of people that we met, and it was wonderful. But this year we're focusing it much more on one partner institution who will then connect us into different communities and different NGOs that they work with on specific projects, again, all rooted in that SDG focus. So we're changing a few things, but on the whole, we felt it really worked as a whole framework to move students from this concept into actually taking action at the end of it. So I wanted to share this framework with you. As Shagan said at the start, this is a real sharing community. I've learned a lot from this community over the years of developing my own knowledge. And, you know, nothing's new. It's just the way that we're applying it might be a bit different to how you might be doing something. And hopefully this will help you to think about that as well. I think the key thing is starting small and testing what works with students. So this summer program didn't just happen. It was a culmination of working on things like Game Changer over such a long time and understanding what works for our students and what they enjoy, what they learn from the most, and starting there and then building on it. And if anybody wants to try Game Changer for themselves, I have a toolkit ready to go. I think it's on the EE UK resources, but I also have another toolkit if you want to use that. It has slide decks ready to go and everything. Very happy to share that. But I think starting there and then scaling from there within your own context is a key thing. I would say it doesn't have to be over long periods of time either. These immersive experiences can happen in short bursts as well. It's just anything that exposes students to something that they're not experiencing every day, I think is really key. And a caveat, as I said at the start, it doesn't have to have a big budget attached to it. And I'll give a few examples of things we've done that have had little to no budget, which have provided the same kind of immersive experiences for students. But the framework that I used is this REAL model. So starting with the real world context. So anything you can do to anchor the learning you're offering in a genuine problem that links to the student's own context first and then grows out from there, I think is the best way to design a program like this. So we really got to understand what our students wanted to learn and were interested in and were passionate about and the change they wanted to make, and then use the networks that we had around us to invite in speakers or create live challenges or whatever it might be, but creating that experience of exploration around a genuine problem, but linking it to the student's own interest is a key driver for success. That emotional engagement is a key thing as well. So that empathy piece, I think it can only happen so far in an environment where they're just reading about something. If they can go and see and hear and feel things for themselves from people who are genuinely experiencing the problems that they're interested in, then that empathy, it's unlike anything else that you can create in a classroom. And I think it creates that sense of urgency of them wanting to do something really, really quickly to solve a problem in collaboration. Is again, that's the key anchor there. But anything you can do to create those experiences for your students is really key. The active ownership, anything where they can do something practical rather than just reading about something, and collaborating with external people, I think gives a richness to that kind of experience, and it brings things to life a lot more quickly and allows them to see what works and what doesn't work really quickly as well. So we did a lot of prototyping work with the students once they had ideas, and they learned a lot through that because they could then take them back to people that they'd met. They had phone calls with people they'd met in India, you know, especially that aqua guard that you saw with the brick. They spoke to the NGO and said, would this work and what can we change? So anything that brings anything to life but gives them ownership over what they're doing is a key thing, and that we wanted to bake in that kind of activity throughout. And then that learning through reflection piece, and making it really intentional. I mean, a lot of students are used to doing this kind of work as part of their degree programs anyway. They're often asked to reflect and do reflective essays for things they've learned. But it's often done at a distance, and it's done, quite far after the experience itself. Whereas we wanted to make them do this every day. Every week we had a check-in. What have you learned this week? What's been interesting? What have you noticed? What do you want to explore further? And then we did that with the journal in India as well, and gave them a place to keep it all so that they could really refresh their memories when they were thinking about what to do next, and helping them understand the kind of impact they can have with what they've learned. So making it all really intentional and linked back to what you set out to achieve, was the framework that we followed here. But as I said, we've been very lucky that we've been able to do this with the budget that we have through the Hunt Raymond program. But before we had that, we were working on these kinds of immersive experiences just on a bit of a smaller scale. So I wanted to give some examples for you so you can think about if there's anything happening in your own institution where you could start, and build from there. So one thing we did was a COIL program. I know COIL is happening a lot across different institutions. But we worked very closely with the International Office a couple of years ago. We got some funding from the British Council to run it. But we worked with the Federal University in Rio de Janeiro to create a COIL program using Game Changer as a base, because it had to be linked to SDGs. And we got the students working together virtually to solve problems. And now I'm replicating that model with the Matariki network, which is a different network of universities that Durham's a part of. And the students are working really well. So what it's doing is it's providing that global experience, that we want them to have. They don't have to travel to have that. They've now got a global network of students and peers in other areas that they can link in with. And the students that took part in the Brazil program tell me every day that they're still in touch with all of those students, that they worked in teams with. But they're coming together to think in this way and learn from each other about their different cultural contexts. So COIL is a great way. If there's any way you can either participate in that or bolt on any activity into an existing COIL program, that's one way to create immersive experiences for your students. One thing that I like doing is this campus as a living lab kind of activity. So I work really closely with our sustainability team, to include the student voice, because quite often their remit's coming from the top. And it's very much about procurement and the estate and things like that. But very rarely do they get students involved in shaping what those projects should look like. So we worked with them for the Green Space Festival, which is an annual activity that they do, to celebrate sustainability on campus. And I run mini Game Changer challenges to engage students with real campus-based problems. So I get the sustainability team to give me a live project, and then the students create solutions for that. And then that's often turned into action actually on campus, so they can see it coming back to that active ownership piece. So that's one way to create another immersive experience. I'm now working with our volunteering and outreach teams, because they're often working with community groups, and often those are kind of environmental projects as well. So community gardens, rewilding, all of those kinds of things that students can get involved in. And it's particularly important for Durham because a lot of students aren't from the area here, so they come from all over the country to come to Durham, and very rarely do they actually go outside of the city of Durham. So it's really good to give them opportunities to actually understand the context of of the area that they're studying in, and to feel more connected to the community as well. So working with volunteering and outreach teams can really help us to do that. And hopefully it can do the same for you where you are. And I'm going to finish sort of on Enactus. Now, I am the Enactus University Advisor. If you haven't heard of it, Enactus is a global organisation that has student teams across the world working on social enterprise projects, which are real projects having real impact on real people. And students can take part in that, and they learn so much through doing it. And I'm a huge advocate for it. I think every student should do Enactus if they can. If your university doesn't currently have a team, I would encourage you to get in touch with the Enactus team and get them to start one. Because it's such a great opportunity for students to really live it, and again do things that they really care about. So it's all rooted in where they are and what they care about, but it's also where they can make a real difference. But it follows that lean methodology of starting a business for real, but with the SDGs baked in, because everything has to be linked to an SDG challenge, and that's why I love it so much. So if you don't already have one, that is a way to do it, and it doesn't really cost anything. It's free to join for the student and for the university, and the students, they run it like a business, so they have to make that money to make the projects run. So that's a great way for students to get that experience. But that's it from me. So I think there's time for questions now. Hopefully that was useful.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. That was really useful. And it was also great to end on that framework to think about how the principles of that activity could also be thought through with less budget or without the international connections. So that was a really nice way of finishing it. Yeah, we've got questions coming through already. Do feel free to unmute yourself. So I'll just pause for a second and see if Lisa wants to come on and ask her question. Do feel free, Lisa, if you want to. If that doesn't happen in a moment, I'll start saying it. Lisa is asking, are the business ideas related to what the students are studying?
Yes, yes and no. So for Alice, she is studying business and management, but her business is actually an AI music platform. Um, but it's linked back to her passion. So her passion, she's a musician. She nearly didn't come to Durham and went to a music school instead, but she's rooted it back in that passion area for her. A lot of times the students we see through the doors of Venture Lab are doing businesses that are quite different to what they're studying anyway, and it was the same for the summer program. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Got a question from Imad. Again, I'll pause for a moment in case they want to come on and say hi. But if they don't, first of all, congratulations for an amazing project and presentation, and thanks for sharing it. What are the main challenges and opportunities that you've faced? And also based on your experience, are there any ways that you would refine the framework?
Yeah, good questions. I think the challenges, I think it was trying to get the students to understand. Well, first of all, I think it was trying to get them to understand that they could lead the activity that they were participating in. So the way it was structured in terms of how we delivered it was a workshop in the morning and then self-led activity based on some tasks we gave them in the afternoon. And it was quite difficult at first for them to get into that, because they're, in their degree programs, it's very spoon-fed, very taught, this is how the structure you're working in. And this was really different for a lot of them in terms of the ways that we're working. So I think the big challenge was getting them to understand that they had total control over what they wanted to get out of this program. They kept coming to me asking, is this project idea okay? Is it okay if I do this? And I was just like, yes, it is. It's okay. This is your time. This is your chance to explore. So I think getting them out of that took a little while. So we've learned a lot from that, and have some activity in that first couple of weeks for the new program of helping them understand and get out of that mindset. I think the opportunities, we were very lucky that we had a lot of connections for setting up that India trip in particular. I think that would have been very difficult to do without the connections we already had. So we do have a member of staff who is based in Delhi, and she helped us set up a lot of the connections that we had. I think that would have been difficult to do otherwise. And how would I refine the framework? I'm always refining the framework. So if anybody else has any ideas, I'd love to hear from it, because that's how I work. Is like I find something, I test it out, and then I go out and talk to people and learn what they're doing. So if anyone has anything that they would like to share, that's kind of how I operate. That's how I would refine the framework. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Rachel. Marjolaine, say hi and ask your question.
Hey. Hi, thank you very much. It was really fascinating. I just wanted to know, because it's a quite intensive program, I just wanted to know if you had many applicants or if your cohort was all the applicants, and if you had more applicants than spots, how did you select the
Yeah,
students?
it was very, yeah, we had 98 applications for the first go, and we then interviewed 50 and we took 20. So it was a very competitive program to get onto. And I think that comes back to the reasons why we wanted to do it in the first place. We knew there was demand for a program like this, and then the applications really demonstrated that demand. Um, it was a shame we couldn't take more, but that's what we had the budget for. In terms of how we selected them, it was quite a robust, and I'm happy to share the application form that we have, but it was quite a robust application process. It had quite a lengthy application to fill in. And then the interview process was really finding out what was driving them. That was what we focused on more than anything, rather than the skills and experiences they already had, because that's almost by the by, because we're going to teach them a lot throughout anyway. So it was more about what was driving them and why they want to participate. And that's how we selected them. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you, Marjolaine. While Laura is unmuting to ask a question, and there's a request from Rachel Cox, if you can share any materials with us. And like, for example, that letter that you were just talking about sounded really useful. So I don't know if you're able to forward it to Shagan, and maybe she circulates it to people who were at the session, if that would be okay.
Sure.
And then Laura, you gave a thumbs up. Do you want to say hi and ask your question?
Hi, Rachel. I should probably know the
Hi.
answer to my question. But you said Game Changer was as popular as ever, which is great. And I think you said attracting over 100 students. What setting are you running that in? Is that in program, so timetabled activity, or is it co-curricular, extracurricular? What's the format of that?
So predominantly extracurricular. So that's where the big ones are. So that's, we run one every term, and that's where we get like about 100 students along to those. But because we're at a place with it now where we've got so many different activities that we can just pick and choose, but it's starting to go into curriculum as well. So I'll do kind of bolt-ons to modules, or I'll do some co-curricular work, particularly with the business school. They're using a lot more of the Game Changer suite, I guess, of activities that we have, and embedding that more into the curriculum there. So it's becoming more curricular, but it's predominantly extracurricular.
Brill, thank you.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Laura. Lisa has asked a question, and it's to hear more about challenges. So it sounds great, but tell us more about challenges that you've had with it all.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of the challenges, quite interesting ones, which I really should have anticipated, but a lot of the questions we had, it's a sustainability focused program. Why are we taking the students all the way to India was a big thing that we came up against, and we had to talk about, the real reasons and really fight the case for why we needed to take them, but then also talk about how we would offset that with the sustainability team. That was a challenge that we came across. I think again, this one big challenge which we're trying to address this year, and we'll see how that goes, but we wanted it to be the kind of program where students were working on something that they cared about the whole way through. And sometimes they would get stuck in teams working on things that at the start of the program they thought they would care about and be interested in, but then decided actually they didn't want to work with that team, but were almost frightened to break away from that team. So they ended up working on things that they didn't really care about, or weren't as passionate about. So this year we're breaking, the students kept calling it Love Island. They had these Love Island make or break sessions every week. So we're now putting in a weekly Love Island where we get the teams to really talk to each other, and make sure they know it's okay. If you don't want to work on that project, you can go and work with someone over here instead. So yeah, the challenges really is a lot to do with the student mindset, and taking them out of the rigidity of that academic setting, I think, is a big challenge. So yeah.
What an absolutely brilliant example vivid example
Yeah.
to finish on, Rachel, and we've got some crying, laughing emojis going on in the chat. But yeah, it's trying to communicate. We're all heading in the same direction. We don't need to think of our teams as cages.
Yeah,
Yeah, but rather
exactly.
baskets flowing down a river to the same destination.
Yeah,
is,
that's a great way to put it. I might use
That's
that,
how I
Catherine.
say it in the MBA thing, where I don't want people to feel trapped. You know, we're trying to do some good. You might jump out of your basket and end up in somebody else's basket. But I
Yeah.
might try Love Island this year. Who knows? So thank you so much, Rachel. Many
Thank you.
applause emojis to you. Lots of thanks coming through in the chat. And just before we wrap up, just to say that the next Sustainable Society SIG event is both a face-to-face and hybrid event. It's on June the 10th, and it was one that Shagan mentioned earlier, called Cooperative Catalyst, and it's in light. So the event has been developed in light of the fact that the government has got a policy agenda to double the size of the cooperative economy, and how can we as enterprise educators think about how we contribute to that. So it will be a day of getting immersed in cooperative business. We've got a consultant called Mark Simmons who's going to be there with us for the whole day. So we will be thinking about startup support and provision on that side of things. And we will also be thinking about examples in terms of curricular and co-curricular developments. So please sign up. There's limited face-to-face places, but it is also a hybrid event as well. So 10th of June, go have a look. The link's in the chat. Thank you so much again to Rachel. That was fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and see you again. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.